So on the eve of Detroit's birthday, July 23rd, I'm riding around downtown retracing the steps that those first occupants of Fort Detroit as they created it. So follow along. So they left Montreal in June, and so when they landed, and I'm gonna go with they landed late July 22nd, 23rd, no. Ooh. So when that party of 100 landed, they were soon joined by a few hundred Native Americans who set up a village around the fort. The fort was determined to be settled. Right here you can see there's a goes up and then back down. So it's between Shelby and Griswold. Right now I'm between Shelby and Jefferson, but it was between Shelby and Griswold that the fort was built. When they landed, they also set up a church, St. Anne's, which probably was around here as well. The church and the fort were the center of life for both the Native Americans and the Europeans who landed here. It was mutual benefit between the Europeans and the Native Americans who resided here. And the fort became a center because that's where trade happened. Also, the way that the lands were parceled out was kind of from this line, these ribbon farms. So those ribbon farms, the reason why they were utilized is because it allowed for access to the river, but then also it kept the community close together because they could join each other using their canoes and because look, that's where the river would have been. That's where the river. I mean, some of this is like reclaimed land, after Detroit burned down, 1805. Remember? Yeah, 1805. That's when Detroit burned down. My research is primarily, I'm really fascinated by the Detroit of the first century from 1701 to the fire, 1805, primarily because there's not a lot of records. So now I'm gonna ride up to where the fort would have been. Oh yeah, that's a good shot. I'm gonna ride up to where the fort would have been located. All of the band, this is very real to how it would have been. Hello. Congress. So the fort was located between Shelby and Griswold. So right now I'm on Shelby, trying to find between Shelby and Griswold. Oh, you can see the hills going up. Hi. So that's why that's why it was determined to be built on this location. So yes, Fort being also First Street in Detroit. You can see I'm going up a hill. Fort up here for safety, well, also observation purposes. Okay. Fort. Shelby Fort. Did I go too far for Griswold? I think I did go too far. Well, that's Lafayette. Where's Griswold? Oh, I'm at Shelby and Lafayette right now, but we're gonna go to Shelby and Griswold. Mind your own business. Mind your own business. People love to talk to me while I'm on my bike. Little do they know that I'm literally time traveling right now, and that me on my bike is very similar to them on their canoes. So if people don't like it, Griswold. So it wasn't this far up. It was actually the next block. So Griswold and Shelby, it was in between these two. So that's kind of where the 4th Street is. Yeah. And I know I'm riding on the sidewalk. It is 11 p.m. It is a Tuesday, July 22nd. So here's 4th Street, but Griswold and Shelby. So this is where the fort was first built, between these steps. St. Anne's Church was also put here. Now I'm going to, this is also where actually I found out too that Joseph Campow put his house right here. He's an interesting figure. Okay. So the fort probably was this whole area where 4th Street is. So Detroit has beautiful plaques, historical plaques, markers. I found out that it was actually the wheelmen, that biking group, was one of the first to put it up. They raised funds and they put it different markers, historical markers. So this feels good. Fort Pontchartrain, the first permanent French settlement in the Detroit region, was built on this site in 1701. The location was recommended by Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac, who wished to move the fur trade center south from Michilimackinac. Cadillac's plan was approved by Count Jérôme de Pontchartrain, minister of Martinique, for whom the fort was named. The term Le Detroit, the strait, was applied to the fort and surrounding area. After 1751, the post was known as Fort Detroit. In 1760, as a result of the French and Indian War, the British gained control of Detroit and other posts in the Great Lakes region. British troops enlarged Fort Detroit, but during the American Revolution, they moved to nearby Fort Le Contois, built 1778-1779. The Americans occupied Fort Le Note in 1796, and in 1813 renamed it Fort Shelby. So I think the thing that's always inspired me about Detroit is that Detroit was created as a utopia. It was conceived, yes, as a way for Cadillac to have more control or monetary gains. But the people who left Montreal, those 50 men, and then their wives and other people who came, the villagers, they all had a different intention. And I think that intention is to form a new way of living. So I believe they came from this direction, right past Belle Isle. In 1701, in that summer, before Cadillac and his men, the party, left Montreal, there was a great peace of Montreal that was signed. And that was signed between the Iroquois and other Native American tribes. And it's on the eve of that great peace that Detroit is created. This is important because it does demonstrate that Detroit was created in celebration. Happy birthday, Detroit. Happy birthday to the dream of creating a new world. Envisioning something that isn't possible yet. Ooh. I like to think about what those men were doing. Oh my gosh. Look, it's a friend.